An all-new episode of The Mitch, Lafon, and Jeremy White Show.
Tuesday at noon.
Available wherever you stream.
Just get whatever you can in when you can, because the Wi-Fi at this hotel is real shaky.
Well, you know what? You sound really good when you talk, so when you talk, we'll shut up.
Yep.
Like,
And then go for it.
Well, Davey Johnstone, brand new record coming out. Obviously, we want to talk about that. And, of course, I mean, geez, nearly 50 years with the man, the myth, the legend, Elton John. You can pick up this new record wherever music is sold. Like, geez, nearly, 40 years later, you decide to put out a brand new record, Mitch? We'll talk about that. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show for the first time, Mr. Davey Johnstone. There he is, everybody.
Yeah, and of course the album's called Deeper Than My Roots, out on February 4th. Just want to get that detail in there.
February 4th.
As we say, bonjour.
Thank you. Good to see you guys this morning.
Yeah. So talk to me about this. I mean, the last one, Smiling Faces, comes out 49 years ago. And you sort of say, this would be a good time for another one. Talk to me about that little hiatus.
It was the perfect time because, 49 years. Is that how long it is? My God. Well, really, he's kept me pretty fucking busy since then, you know? So I haven't really had time to put all my energies into something as kind of intimate as a solo record. So the COVID thing, you know, like a lot of people have jumped on that whole issue as being a reason for doing something, you know, that they really wanted to do. And it was the same thing for me. I just suddenly thought, wow, I'm going to be home for a while. What is it that I used to do? And I plugged myself into, you know, me kind of before I joined Elton, as a young guy, just, you know, moving from Scotland down to London. And, you know, just all the whole thing about me learning about the business and learning about women and alcohol and drugs and other stuff like that, which have been, you know, obviously a huge part of my life in different ways. And thankfully, I finally got it under control. So it's good.
Nice.
Yeah, it is. So talk to me about what you wanted to say on this one. Were these songs that have been sort of kicking around, and I jokingly say for 49 years, and you said, I'm going to get them out? Or are they songs that you just said, hey, you know what? I'm just going to write a fresh batch and see what happens?
Yeah, they're exactly that. They're brand new. You know, I just figured that, as I said a minute ago, that the idea of being able to put myself into what I was writing without thinking about maybe the next Elton gig that was coming up, or having to show the band something or rehearse the guys on something, because that's part of my job with Elton. So suddenly I was in a position where I'm totally free. I don't have to do anything, or I can do whatever I want. And I've always been, you know, I've always enjoyed sitting down composing just maybe instrumentals or guitar pieces. But to actually write some full songs again, I needed a bit of help. And a good friend of mine, Rick Otto, is a wonderful lyricist and poet and actor who lives in California. And I asked him if he wanted to, you know, collaborate on a couple of songs, which he'd never done before. He agreed, and it came out really, really well. So all the songs were brand new. And there was one that was co-written by one of my boys, Charlie, who also engineered some of the album and played keyboards on it. And there were two other pieces. They are the only pieces that are from a little while ago. They're 10 years old. The two instrumentals on the record, one's called Black Scotland, the other one's called Walt Disney. And they're both kind of crazy instrumentals that I recorded with one of my boys, Jesse, again, and my eldest boy, Tam, who recorded it and mixed it, and the wonderful Bob Birch, who unfortunately we lost back in 2012.
Right.
These two instrumentals that he played on for me were probably the last things that he did before he passed, which was just total tragedy. But yeah, those are the only two that are a little bit older than the song batch, which is all recent stuff. So I'm really proud of it because, as you probably saw from the album cover and that, I've been able to utilize my kids' enormous talents. Elliot's he's the youngest. He's the lead vocalist on most of the album, and my daughter Juliet designed the whole package, the cover. I don't know if you've been given a copy of that, but it's pretty outrageous.
As a dad, it must be really gratifying to be able to work with the children on this, because I mean, it really does come full circle at the end of the day.
Exactly. It's been amazing. And, I'm not one of those dads that is, guys, you got to do this. I'm not one
You're
of
not one of
those.
those like, that's my boy. That's my boy.
Yeah. I'm like I'm an easygoing guy. And I've been blessed with a lot of very talented, artistic kids. And it was almost like, well, we're all here. We're all at home right now. Do you feel like singing, doing a track with me? And they were like, sure. So, the very first track we did was the Beatles cover that's on the record, Here, There, and Everywhere. And I just asked Elliot, I said, do you want to sing something if I put down a guitar part? And he said, sure. And, we were like bored shitless, didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And we did this version of Here, There, Everywhere. And I added some mandolins on it and put a vocal harmony on Elliot's part. And suddenly the whole thing started to sound really cool. And I thought I might have a little recipe going here for something that could be a very interesting project. And that's the way the whole thing carried on just from there. And very modest beginnings. And it carried on that way. I did most of it at the house. And then some of it at my friend Marlon Hoffman's home studio. And he and my engineer, Major Wynn, just got together and we made things happen in these very, very organic, friendly surroundings. There was no commercial studios in this whole thing.
Wow.
No commercial studios at all. We did it all, on our own.
With the little M box at home on the home studio and the headphones.
There you go. Exactly. And it was just so much fun. And then the one finishing touch that I put to the whole record once I'd finished it and mixed it was I got a dear friend, Howie Weinberg, who's a wonderful mastering engineer, and he agreed to master it for me, just to give it a bit more of that analog sound that I wanted to get on it.
Right.
And he did a brilliant job. And so, yeah, I've got this great little package, which I'm thrilled about. It's coming out in about a week's time.
It's amazing what you can do in home studios these days. But I mean, like through your entire career, I'm sure you've recorded in some of the most incredible recording studios in the world. I mean, is it still the same to be sitting at home in the bedroom or in the home studio and doing it? Or is there something about being in that big room with the band and getting that vibe off the floor?
Well, that's obviously wonderful. But, unfortunately, I mean, almost everybody I know has gone into a different kind of recording. Even the last kind of loose recordings that we did with Elton back in 2016, I want to say, with T-Bone Burnett, we did a couple of live things with the whole band playing at one time, but it's something that's not really followed up into the from the way that it used to be. When we recorded the early classic Elton albums, it was just Elton, myself, Dee Murray, and Nigel Olsson. That was it, 4 of us. When we did those albums, we were obviously playing at the same time. We were writing the songs and then recording them straight away.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting and really quick, because that's the way that I like to work, and that's the way that Elton's always enjoyed working. So I can always work that way. But to be honest with you, many people nowadays don't work that way. They work, they'll get a basic idea for a track and then build it up piece by piece, which I'm not a huge fan of that way of working. So what I did on this record was I played pretty much everything myself.
Oh, wow.
Because I just, I know how to do that. And so it's a lot of fun.
And total control as well.
Yeah, it's good fun. And yeah, exactly. You get what you want. But then for the drum tracks, I'm not a drummer. I got my son Jesse played on, I think, 5 tracks. And my dear friend Denny Sywell, ex of Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney's band, yeah.
Yeah. He played on 3 or 4 tracks too. So it was, apart from my family, there was like Denny and Nigel Olsson played on 1 track, our drummer. He played on Melting Snow, which was amazing. And but yeah, apart from that, it was all the family deal,
Do the kids look at you and they're like, listen, I played with Elton John my whole life. I mean, I think you can play with me. Do the kids look at you like, oh, you played with Elton? They're like, Dad, all right, we'll sing on your record.
Oh yeah, they're pretty blasé about all that, because they've been coming to Elton shows. All of them have, since they were tiny, and they all know Elton really well. I mean, it's Uncle Elton, and or worse. And, he's always been super kind to them and really nice to the kids, and they adore him. Yeah. In fact, he he recently, when he heard this record that I've just done, he made a point of FaceTiming me one day and demanded to speak to Elliot, the singer, and he proceeded to tell Elliot how great he thought his voice was, and the way he looks and the way he is, and his possibilities for having a career if he wants it in this business. And it was just so encouraging for Elliot. It was like, wow, you know, because as much as they know Elton, they're familiar with him, and it's what it is, and they've seen hundreds of concerts, us playing these shows. But when they actually are you know, in a conversation with him, it's still quite daunting for them as young people, because no matter who you are, what age you are, the name Elton John is kind of like this.
It's iconic. I mean, listen, when your PR approached us and said you want to talk to Elton John's guitarist, and that's not how they said it, I just went, yeah, I do.
Of course.
But I want to go back to the first time I saw you, Davey. It was in the movie Roadie, and you're doing Pain with Alice Cooper and all that stuff. And and that band from that era was great. And so I just want to quickly ask you, because I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan, so I just want to ask you about From the Inside. You've got Dee Murray on there. You've got Bernie Taupin, who wrote, and of course Dee passed away, you know, God rest his soul. Mm-hmm. What was that like being on there? Because you've got Steve Lukather, you got the guys from Toto, you've got David Foster. I mean, From the Inside is, I mean, it's a gathering of might.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. It really is a superb album, and it did very well when it came out, and it's one of those that I think should be considered a classic album. It's one of those really great works. And well, see, I've known Alice forever, and I adore him. He and his wife Cheryl are one of
great
our
people.
greatest friends.
Salt of the earth.
They're just absolutely beautiful people. They're really the best. Their kids and everything, I just adore them. So when this thing came up about the album, it was interesting because I hadn't ever worked with them. I knew David Paich in those days because of my friendship with James Newton Howard, who played in our band in the mid-70s after Dee and Naja were kind of unceremoniously dumped for a few years there. James was in the band, so we were very close, and he knew David Paich, and he knew Jeff Porcaro, who I'd worked with also in a lot of session work when I first, you know, would got my feet wet doing that in LA, and I loved doing it. And I remember one day talking to Jeff, who, again, another brilliant guy who's been gone for many years now. And what a wonderful drummer and a great person. And that whole family, the Porcaros, you know, Jeff with his brother Steve, who played keyboards in Toto, Michael, who also passed from Lou Gehrig's disease, which was a total tragedy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Jeff and I were talking one day, and he said, you know what? We've got this band we're putting together, and we're going to call it Toto. And he said, I've got this young guitar player, and what he does is he does what you British guys do. He's got this great crunchy kind of rhythm sound and lead sound that really we base ourselves on that whole Brit rock type of thing.
Yeah.
And when I heard Steve playing, I was stunned at his brilliance, and I still am. I got to tell you, Steve and I are good friends. And he actually works with another good friend of ours, Ringo, who's a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
And Steve's been working with Ringo along with Greg Bissonette and some of these other great players for the last 5 or 6 years. And but back then, I was only maybe 23 then. Right. And Steve was only like 19 or something.
Right.
And it was like, those were the new guys. And what really struck me back then was how reverential Steve, well, it was like, Dave, he's great, man. Meanwhile, I'm listening to this kid playing this phenomenal, you know, innovative solo style and all the rest of it. And I just knew, I said, this is a new thing that's going to happen here right now. And so Elton and I have always championed Toto in those old days, and I still adore them to this day. I just had dinner with David Paich recently, and I actually saw Steve Porcaro on a call last night. So, you know, we're all very closely linked over those years, and it's just wonderful to know that these guys are still doing what they're so great at doing.
Yeah, you're all still doing it. I mean, it's 50 years and 3,000 shows with Elton John. I mean, And by the way, do you get like a gold watch or something for that?
I got the gold watch back in '84. Actually,
There you go.
yeah.
I would expect the
It was
gold
kind of a
watch.
prepaid item, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
these
I
days
think
you.
hoping I'm just going to hang around till the end. But you know what? We're getting pretty close to the end of the touring cycle. If COVID actually really lets us do that, because
Right.
we're out here on the road, and you probably saw from all the press and all the shit going on that he's got it. So he's got a quarantine for 5 days, and we're over in Little Rock, Arkansas right now, waiting to see if we can play the show on Saturday night. But yeah, we're doing what we do best, but we also know that it's got to end somewhere because of our age and just the whole nature of life. I mean, the road's actually a place for much younger guys than us.
Yeah.
The only thing that's unfortunate about it is that most of the young people nowadays are not going out on the road because they haven't really honed their craft enough to really perform well, and do what we used to do when we were first doing it, which was get out there and play for an hour.
Yeah, you guys didn't have the luxury of Pro Tools and all the playback and just mime to your parts.
They do their
You actually had
their
to
stuff
play
in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And by the way, I love Pro Tools and Logic and all those great. They're wonderful. And my son Charlie is a whiz, and also my son Jesse and Tam. They're all wizards at this technology. And I do believe that it can be used for the right reasons in recording.
Be good
A lot of
used
it's
for
used
good.
You can use it for good and not evil.
Yeah, a lot of it is bullshit, and they can fix this, fix that, and they can make anybody who sings like a bear, they can make them sing in tune. So there's a lot of those things that unfortunately it gets misused, I think, in some areas. But I got to tell you, used in the right way, it's a phenomenally effective, tool in the recording bag up to this day. And I certainly use it with my kids. Why not?
Better than baking tape and razor blades.
And we've done some of that too.
Yeah. It's funny. It's amazing how you talk about Steve Lucas there, because I was just texting with his son Trev the other day. He's working in the studio with his dad producing a record for him. He had Simon Phillips on drums, and he's like, it's so weird to be in the studio with my dad in a working capacity, because I've gone to so many sessions with him in the past, and to be in the moment, saying like, hey, Dad, why don't you try this? Like producing him. He's like, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's great that you can... that I'm sure Steve listens to his boy too, because, it just seems to be that thing where music is a very strong gene, very, very powerful gene, as I've found through all my children. They all have it, whether they wanted it or not. They've got this ability to create music and art and all the rest of it. It's a really powerful gene. And, when I'm working with my own kids, I listen to them, I may not agree with everything they say, but I'll sure listen to them, because what I've found is that all their ideas are so valid. And if I'm not open to them, then it's going to be my loss if I don't listen to their ideas, because they're the ones who are really living in the now as far as today's music's concerned. Yeah. And no matter who you are, you've got to be aware of what's going on around you. And I'm not going to be some hermit who lives in a cage in a cave or something and just wants to do exactly what I want to do. Even though this is my project, I'm quite open to what's around me, to the ideas, because that's the way that I was given that chance.
Well, I think that's the beauty of collaboration, right?
Yeah. I was given the free hand to do exactly what I wanted, to play the way I wanted to play. And that's a gift,
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get over to Jeremy's gear talk, let me just finish up on the Alice Cooper thing, because you go on the road with him, and then of course 79, 80, 81, we start getting into those lost Cooper years where substance became more important than music. And we know the story, and listen, it has a happy ending because he's happy, he's touring, but what was that like for the band? Were you also in those lost years, or were you sort of looking from the inside going, Alice, were you part of the whole nastiness, or were you sort of saying, Alice, come on, dude, come on?
No. I was Mr. Clean. No, I'm kidding. Now, listen, I think if anybody tells you they lived in music through those years and didn't get involved in, as you term it, nastiness or whatever, then they're straight out fucking lying, because there was so much of this going on. You couldn't really avoid it. I'm not saying that everybody was mental. So in one sense, your question is a really good one, because I know on a couple of occasions, I called up Alice's manager, or I talked to Cheryl, and I would say, my God, I'm so worried about him, because it really is, because, addiction is a terrible thing. I know, because I've had my own battles to fight, and I'm doing great. So that it's wonderful.
Well,
but
congratulations.
Awesome.
But he was also emaciated. I mean, he was starving himself to death.
Yeah, it was
literally
so really, really super heavy. And as I say, I called Shep a couple of times, and Shep Gordon is another wonderful, wonderful guy.
Yep.
What a great manager to have, and Alice and him have been friends since the very beginning. So when your best friends see you go through this kind of situation, your real friends will be there to try and help you through it or help you out of it. There's other people, obviously, who just want to be part of the party, and they want to chip in, and they want to just take what they can.
I'll buy a bag. Let's keep going.
That's right. And unfortunately, there's so many of those parasites around, always have been. But, thankfully, as you mentioned, Alice listens, and he's got he's got very strong faith. And he was able to find strength, with his higher power, and be able to listen to his wife basically pleading with him to get his shit together. And he did. It took some time, but you know what? There's nobody doing better than Alice right now. And, not a nicer person, not a sweeter person. But then again, even through all the bad years, he was just that way too. It's just that what was weighing him down was something that was a very evil power that we all have to find our way. We all have to negotiate and maneuver our way through that minefield.
And when you hear that song, Pain, knowing what was going on in his life at that time, it just adds that layer of extra, I don't realness or whatever to that song. And you feel the pain in the song Pain. It's,
right.
That's right. Cries for help all over the place. Yep. Because most people, I think the unfortunate thing, because Alice is such a crazy, outrageous stage presence, that people were just kind of saying, well, it's just Alice Cooper. That's the way he behaves.
Yeah, it's all shtick.
But no, it was a really, really dangerous time. So I'm so glad that we all made it through. That's the main thing, because it filters down to everybody. And no matter how vigilant you may think you are, it's going to hit you at some point. You've just got to be real careful, and you got to bank on your real friends to help you through it, because that's the ones that you really have to count on when all's said and done.
It's amazing how many stars and musicians that the drugs and the drink have just taken out over the years. I mean, look at working with Elton. I mean, just watching Rocket Man and the amount of substance abuse that they kind of discuss in the movie. I mean, that was the trend. That was the thing. Everybody was doing it.
That's right. Danger City. Really, it's but it's no less dangerous now, because of the deaths we've seen in the last 10 years. Everything from Tom Petty, the Prince, and just dreadful. I mean, all to do with shit like fentanyl and stuff like that. It's like, what are you looking for, guys? What is it? You're looking for pain relief or just total fucking numbness? It's very, very sad. But unfortunately, it seems that musicians and artists have always looked for that extra, place to go that's a little dangerous and a little trendy, because that's what it is. Unfortunately, it's a very fine line between being trendy and being dead.
Yeah.
Just ask Whitney Houston.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, look at musicians. Like you said, they're always trying to look for that maybe darkness, but it's like, they always try and fill this unfillable void inside them, and they try and do that with the drinking and the drugs. And it's like, at the end of the day, I mean, does it fill the void?
No.
Definitely not. But actually, that was my name in Alice's band for a while. I was called Phil the Void.
No way.
Phil the Void.
That's a great name. Mitch, isn't that your stripper name?
That's my stripper name, yeah. Oh, my God. Hey, who's going to be our guitarist? I don't know. Who? Just Phil the Void. Just any guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Phil the Void. He works with Rat Scabies and all these other people. He's great.
Gear talk. Let's go.
Yeah, Davey, I want to know. I mean, listen, you've been playing with Elton for nearly 50 years, thousands and thousands of gigs. Through the years, you've seen everybody from Eddie Van Halen to Michael Landau to Steve Lukather to the Dan Huffs, with every guitar rig possible. How have you made the transition through the decades, and are you still using amps, or are you playing through the Fractals and Kempers of the 2022?
No fucking way. No, I'm using amps, of course. No, but like everybody else, I'm pretty sure, or like most guitar players, I would study the way things flowed. Like, I started using, well, in the beginning of my career, it was like AC30s,
Right.
deluxe reverbs, Marshall stacks, this kind of thing. And then slowly, as we got into the 80s, it began to, the Bradshaw stuff started, the Bob Bradshaw.
The big rack
pedal
systems.
boards, all this really cool MIDI stuff. And yeah, that was really, I mean, I had a rack with SX70s in it and all this top of the line studio shit, until I realized towards the end of the 80s that my guitar sound had turned into this processed nothing really, and it wasn't me, it wasn't my style.
Yeah.
So bit by bit I shed all that stuff off, went back to just a basic amp setup and guitar, and went back to using amps like, well, I always liked Mesa Boogie. In fact, I was given the first two of those in 75 when I was up at Caribou Ranch.
Wow.
To try out. Instantly loved them. So Mesa Boogie was a big player. Matchless also, as we got into the late 80s, early 90s. And then what I discovered was that, I don't want all of these effects. So I stripped it right back to nothing. I've always liked using, for example, a volume pedal, because I love using swell stuff.
Riding on it, put a nice little harmonizer on there. And
yeah, it's beautiful. And it's great for slide and things like that. But I cut it right back to nothing. So what I use nowadays, I use two Hughes and Kettner amps.
Nice.
Pure tone amps, which are killer. They're much more in that region of the AC30 / matchless / boogie. They've got that whole capability in there.
Yeah.
They're killer. And
a lot of country guys talk about the matchless amps. That's like the like if you want to run like a really nice clean sound with just all of your effects going through it, like apparently matchless is the amp to use.
Very much so. The problems that I was beginning to have, though, was I needed to have amps that were roadworthy, because we really do a lot of traveling. And for example, you can barely take an AC30 if you travel like us with the size of equipment, all the gear that we have. It's not going to make it. So that's one of the reasons I went to Hughes and Kettner, and also because they make wonderful outboard stuff. They make an incredible Leslie cabinet simulator called a Rotosphere that is just probably, I mean, it's the next best thing to a Leslie.
Super authentic.
And I've also, at home, I use a few other ones. I use the Strymon at home, which is the Leslie simulator again, which is killer.
Yeah.
But also they make a great tube driver type of effect for my crunch sound and my solo sounds. And then if I want to go crazy, I have a blues driver set to hell that,
Nice.
when I want to just go off to the stratosphere. And maybe a compressor I use, obviously a chorus. And that's really it. I use a wah, a couple of things, but not overuse. I find that for our shows, I like to really use effects sparingly. Yeah. So that when you do use it, it really is effective.
Are they all old vintage? I was going to say, are they all old vintage stomp boxes, or are you using like a multi-effects thing?
No, they're pretty vintage.
Yeah.
They're all, I mean, put it this way. I don't want to, again, because of the way that we travel, you have to really be careful. So my pedal board is really straight ahead. It's really, well protected, because also there's the point that we have 3 separate rigs of gear. I mean, meaning that in every rig, I have my 2 stage amps, and then I have 2 backups. Wow. And I have 2 pedal boards. And one of those rigs will contain one of Elton's piano and a backup piano. One of Nigel's drum sets and a backup set of drums. You know what I mean? Yep. It's like, it's so much gear. And the one set would be in LA. One set would be on the East Coast of this country, and another set would be in Europe, because that's the kind of traveling that we're used to doing. We just have to make sure. So that means that I don't get to play my favorite guitars every night either. I mean,
does that affect your performance? I mean, you got your fly rig, and then you got the main touring rig. I mean, if you're not playing your favorite guitar, does it affect your performance?
Not really, because I find that, I stopped relying on favorites and vintages a long time ago. When I realized what our touring was going to be. It became more important to me that I did have the instruments that I wanted. So Gibson have been and Fender have been really, really helpful to me over the years, enabling me to get the best possible Les Paul and a few backups that I wanted to take on the road with me. So I've been very, very, and that, that's one of the major perks about being in this kind of an organization, is that people are only too happy for you to, use their stuff. So I've been able to use, for example, the same bank of Les Pauls and Fenders for the last 20 years. So I've played them all in, so that, it might not be my favorite guitar, but, for example, you can't carry that favorite guitar everywhere. I just can't do it. It's not
you have to buy an airline seat for it.
Yeah, but you know what? We travel, we get, we have our own charter and stuff like that. But it's like, nothing's easy in this world. What you have to do is it's a world of compromises. If we were a smaller outfit and maybe played smaller venues, and it was more of like a specialized thing with one set of equipment, then it would be different. Then I like Kenny Wayne, another dear friend of mine, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. He can take his favorite 2 or 3 guitars with him, his favorite amp set and all the rest of it. But they're not playing to 30,000 people, all over the world all the time, which is what, when we get on the road, that's what it tends to be.
Yeah. Well, look, hey, March 9th and 10th at the Bell Center in Montreal. I want to come check out your pedal board.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Just,
you'll be
lucky if you get in there, man. There's a bubble from hell going on here.
Yeah.
I know. I still haven't seen Elton John live, but I'll have to. Let me just ask you one Elton John question. The name on the marquee is, of course, Elton John. But you've been there for 50 years. Have you? I mean, he's incredibly loyal, because when you're in a band like that, they switch out guitarists and drummers like they change their socks. But he's stuck with you. Do you have an ability to affect the music, or does he say, "Hey, it's Elton John on the marquee. It's my album. It's my songs. You're going to play it my way"? Or is it really a collaboration where you can sit and go, "Elton, here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to construct it"?
Well, again, I've stuck with him.
Right.
He's not just stuck with me. I've stuck with him.
It's not a one-way street here, Mitch.
It's not a one-way street. Because the interesting thing to note is, right from the beginning, since we started working, I mean, I'm talking more than 50 years ago, when I first walked into the studio as a 19-year-old kid to play guitar on Madman Across the Water. Right from that moment, I've always played what I wanted to play. Nobody's told me, well, you better play this or you have to play that. It's never worked that way. So consequently, what's happened is that I've become his musical director, band leader, whatever you want to call it, musical confidant. So whenever he's got a question, apart from everything else, he hates to rehearse. So I rehearsed. I take the band in with a dear friend of mine, Adam Chester, who's my surrogate Elton, who rehearses with me. He loves singing Elton songs, so it's all cool. But that means we can rehearse with a full band complement. So Elton gives me free hand with all that, with rehearsing the band and arranging the songs the way I think they should be on stage. And if there's any change when we get up to the tour, we might make a little cut here and there, but it's totally collaborative. Always has been.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Great.
That's really cool to hear, because I mean, Elton could easily just be a diva, be like, no, play like the record or fuck off. But no, he's like, hey, have some fun.
I just told him that the other night.
Well, there you go.
As you do.
Absolute pleasure, by the way. Jeremy, go ahead.
Listen, the Davey Johnstone band, Deeper Than My Roots, coming out on February 4th. You can pre-order it now wherever you get your music. Of course, you could just stream it, download it. But hey, listen, you want the physical product, because if you see him backstage at a show, he can't sign your MP3. So
that's correct.
Yeah, support the kids, the beautiful artwork. It's been it's a proper family effort, which is what we like to see. So go and pick this up. And of course, performing at Montreal's Bell Center, 2 back-to-back gigs on March 9th and 10th. Some tickets are still available at evenco.ca. Davey, we'll have to go for lunch or something when you're in Montreal. This was a blast.
Yep, absolutely.
Great talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yep, best of luck with this. And good luck with the rest of the tour. Stay healthy.
We'll try.
Cheers.
And good luck with your internet.
Bye now.
It's amazing it lasted. Thanks, guys.
See you later.
An all-new episode of The Mitch, Lafon, and Jeremy White Show.
Tuesday at noon.
Available wherever you stream.